During the 13th century, the Mongol Empire swept across the vast grasslands of Central Asia, creating the world's largest contiguous land empire. With their lightning-speed horsemen and brilliant tactics, they achieved a record of nearly unbroken successes that reduced innumerable kingdoms and civilizations to dust. A kingdom among them was Hungary. Early in the 1240s, the Mongol horde poured into Europe. Their worst blow came in 1241 at the fabled Battle of Mohi, more commonly known as the Battle of Mohi, when the army of King Bela IV of Hungary was completely destroyed. The battle had a lasting psychological impact on the Hungarian people. The Mongols not only annihilated the Hungarian army, but they ravaged the countryside, killing thousands and leveling towns and villages to smoldering ruin. It is reckoned that close to 1/4 of the population of Hungary was killed in this ghastly campaign. The kingdom was devastated and left exposed, its cities reduced to ashes, its defenses breached. This experience transformed Hungary permanently. The ordeal of the Mongol invasion was a rough wake-up call. The Hungarian rulers and people learned that if the Mongols ever came back, and they hoped they would not, it would be necessary to prepare better. They would require greater defenses, more professional soldiers, and defended towns. They could no longer sustain the same vulnerabilities that had destroyed them in 1241. And, as it would turn out, the Mongols did return. During the winter of 1285, more than 40 years since the initial invasion, a gigantic Mongol army marched once more into Hungary, comprised of powerful generals of the Golden Horde, an offshoot of the Mongol Empire that controlled the northwestern portion of the empire. This army aimed to finish what their ancestors had begun, the complete conquest of Hungary. But this time, it would be different. The second Mongol invasion of Hungary offers one of the most dramatic turnarounds of fortune in all the history of the Mongol conquests. What the invaders anticipated as a quick and devastating campaign became a humiliating defeat. The Hungarians, hardened now by experience and remade through decades of reform, were prepared. Let us join them in this suspenseful chapter of medieval war to learn how Hungary met its worst fear and turned the tide. As long ago as 1241, when the disastrous Mongol invasion struck, the Hungarian army was appallingly ill-prepared. The kingdom was not fortified properly. Most towns had hardly any walls. The army itself consisted mainly of light cavalry, which was useless against the superior mobility and organization of the Mongols. Only a few of the heavily armored warriors, including the Knights Templar and Teutonic Knights, were able to cause any real harm to the invaders. Knowing the desperate condition of his kingdom, King Bela IV acted immediately and comprehensively when the Mongols departed. The destruction they had left was so thorough that Bela started calling himself the second founder of the Hungarian state. He recognized that the nation wasn't just in need of rebuilding, it required being reborn. He first began bolstering the army, taking notice of the strength of heavily armed cavalry during the battle. Bela reshaped his mounted forces into a new class of knights in the Western European manner. In 1247, he invited the Knights Hospitaller to colonize along the southeastern frontier in return for the provision of land on which they would construct stone fortresses and introduce trained heavy cavalry. The objective was to create a defensive line that could absorb and thwart subsequent invasions. A year hence, in 1248, he bestowed additional rights of knighthood to the middle classes and permitted all persons who had money to spend on a horse and armor to ride into battle beneath a baron's banners. This further developed the army and provided a spur to prepare the population militarily. Foreign colonists with money to supply arms and means to defend themselves. Bela also presented land and barony rights with to attract people and increase manpower as well as competence in Hungary. A further valuable lesson learned in the Battle of Mohi was the worth of crossbowmen. Although small in number during the invasion in 1241, the crossbowmen who had engaged the Mongols had fought well against them. Thus, Bela entered into a strategic treaty with the Venetians, who were renowned for their excellent crossbowmen. By this alliance, Hungary acquired the services of a minimum of 1,000 Venetian crossbowmen who joined the service of the king and introduced a new level of tactical complexity to the army. Simultaneously, Bela set his sights on Hungary's vulnerable cities and towns. He signed a series of reforms encouraging urban centers to construct stone walls and towers. Any town that fortified itself was given subsidies and royal rewards. The reaction was incredible. More than 100 new fortresses were constructed, and Hungary's main settlements were soon surrounded by imposing stone walls prepared to weather future sieges. By the time King Bela died in 1270, he had seen a total reorganization of his kingdom's military, society, and infrastructure. Although he would not survive to see the results of his work put to the test, his legacy would be important 15 years later when the Mongols came back. In 1285, the Golden Horde again invaded Central Europe. This time the operation was commanded by Nogai Khan, the de facto leader of the Horde, and his relative Talabuga. With their power, they believed they could crush Hungary forever. They thought the kingdom was in disarray due to internal conflicts. Internal strife and political turmoil had been reported to them. Thousands of Cumans, nomadic warriors in alliance with Hungary, had been driven out and fled to seek refuge among the Mongols. To Nogai, Hungary seemed ready again for the taking. The Mongol strategy was to make a two-pronged attack. Nogai would take an army through Bozo into Transylvania, and Talabuga would come into northern Hungary from the north through the Verek Pass. The invading army was huge, between 30,000 and 50,000 men, a number facilitated by the comparative tranquility in the Mongol world at that moment. Once again, the Mongols used speed, mobility, and shock. They began the campaign in winter, expecting to surprise the Hungarians. But this time, they encountered a very different Hungary. The land was now ringed with castles, and its inhabitants had acquired a culture of readiness. Villagers retreated into stone strongholds at the first hint of attack, carrying their food and livestock with them. The Mongols found themselves advancing through an empty, desolate land without supplies. Talabuga's troops in the north were the first to falter. With no easy loot and no provisions, his men starved and became demoralized. The fortresses were too strongly defended to be taken quickly. As castle after castle slid past them with no success, Mongol morale started to disintegrate. Thousands starved to death. Even the town of Pest had been evacuated, its people retreating to surrounding fortified positions. At Buda, Hungarian knights rode out from behind stone walls to make a bold raid on the Mongol column. Queen Elizabeth of Sicily, according to some accounts, observed the attack from the top of the city walls. The knights struck and vanished before the Mongols could counterattack. Talabuga was enraged, ordering savage reprisals and extensive pillaging, but he still did not take any castles or large cities. One of the most important battles was fought close to the castle of Turnus-Severin, where Hungarian knights defeated a Mongol detachment decisively. Employing their heavy armor and disciplined formations, the Hungarians charged and penetrated the Mongol ranks, capturing almost 1,000 prisoners. Such success would have been unthinkable in 1241. The last blow to Talabuga's army occurred in Transylvania's western hills, where he suddenly crossed paths with the core Hungarian royal army under King Ladislaus IV. This army, in contrast to the poorly equipped force of the previous years, was now equipped with heavy cavalry and veteran soldiers. The Hungarians issued a well-organized charge that decimated the weakened Mongol lines. Knowing the war was lost, Talabuga called for retreat. But even the retreat became a disaster. As they retreated, the Mongols were ambushed by the Sakeli people, ferocious warriors expert in light cavalry tactics. The surprise attack caused heavy casualties. Some chroniclers claim that Talabuga returned home with nothing but his wife and a single horse. This is probably an exaggeration, but it testifies to the crushing nature of the defeat. Nogai Khan did not fare any better. Although he remained in Transylvania through the spring of 1286 and was able to sack towns such as Radodi, Buzo, and Bistritsa, he also failed to take any important fortresses. His forces were ultimately pinned down and defeated by local troops led by Roland Borsa, a wealthy Hungarian and Romanian noble. By the time King Ladislaus arrived with reinforcements, there was little left for him to do but chase the remnants of Nogai's army as they limped out of Hungary. The contrast between the invasions of 1241 and 1285 is as great as it could be. In the first, Hungary was overrun, its population massacred, and its towns devastated. In the second, it was the Mongols who were defeated again and again, unable to capture the fortresses, short of supplies, and harassed on every side. This stunning turnabout was not the result of chance, but of planning, sacrifice, and the hard-won lessons of a previous calamity. King Bela IV's reforms, his emphasis on heavy cavalry, crossbowmen, immigration, and stone fortifications, transformed a weak kingdom into a strong bulwark of resistance. These reforms allowed Hungary not only to survive the second invasion, but to decisively defeat one of the most dreaded military powers in all history. The Mongols never again made a full-scale invasion of Hungary. Neither would they menace Central Europe so fiercely in the future. Hungary had planted a stake in the ground and held fast. Hungary even launched a counterattack in the years that passed. Hungarian troops would ultimately advance into Mongol-held lands, recapturing territory and exerting influence over such areas as Moldavia. The hunter had turned into the hunted. The second Mongol invasion of Hungary is a compelling reminder of the power of resilience, preparation, and solidarity in the face of sheer odds. It is an unusual and remarkable case of a nation learning from experience, restructuring itself from the foundations, and emerging stronger than ever.